Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where we've got the TNT takes, except with a twist. It's the Mucky take, baby. I'm your host, Mucky, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. She was a finalist on Traitors New Zealand. She made the smartest move of the week for week 2 in Hamish's and I's smartest move of the week competition. It is the great Julia. Julia, how are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. You know, Hamish has been a massive fan of you throughout this entire series, and he's been telling me the whole time, Mucky, you got to get a deep dive with Julia. And
I'm so pleased because I was, I guess probably my gameplay was a bit under the radar. So yeah, but we can smash that out and go into that conversation shortly. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like at moments, especially at the start, we didn't really get to see your gameplay, but as time sort of went on, we slowly got to see more insight behind some of your strategy, like who you're sort of aligned with, the groups you were in, and going forward. What was your experience with the show overall?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was amazing, and I know a lot of us when we were approached to do the show. Initially, I actually said no, and
Okay.
out of all the weird places that I got asked, I got shoulder tapped via LinkedIn, and it went into a spam folder, and
Yeah.
because there's always a billion people going, can I do your SEO marketing? And you're like, ah!
Yeah.
It goes straight to the folder. So I left it there, and then got a follow-up, and I wouldn't say they were persistent, but they were like, hey, no, this is legit. We'd really like to meet you, and said, to even take this meeting, we need to have an NDA signed. And I was like, oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay, this must be legitimate. Took the meeting, and initially I was like, oh, heck no, I'm not doing reality television, because I was nervous with how they would edit it and how you would be portrayed, or would they create a certain character for you, and etc. And they said, oh no, before you make your decision, come back to us on Monday and watch some of the UK format, because it was, how it is actually when you hear it, it's quite a complex game and format to understand. You don't really understand how good it is until you watch it. And I know that a lot of audiences here in New Zealand found the same, that it wasn't until they started watching it, they're like, it's good.
Yeah.
So I watched the BBC, some of the BBC version, not all of it. Kind of came in halfway through, and my partner and I just looked at each other and went, hey, this is a really cool opportunity to experience something that's once in a lifetime, and give it a nudge, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Well, that was actually a question I had for you. How much of Traitors UK or potential Traitors US, I know that Traitors Australia probably had their first season up before you guys went out to film. How much of the Traitors did you actually watch before you went out? Was it just the UK, or?
Yeah, just the UK one, but I didn't see the entire season, so I came in maybe halfway through. So I got an understanding of the game and kind of organized my thought pattern as how I would play it. So I guess we probably did have that advantage over other global formats. But in saying that, I know that with the New Zealand format, although we did some missions that were similar, it wasn't the same. There was a lot of things that happened that they did deliberately to kind of throw us off. So yeah, and for me it was a different experience, because I went in there being a normal person, and so I guess probably the advantage and disadvantage for us was not having any rapport. We had no relationship, so it was something that we had to build. We were kind of unknown people, and that was a good and a bad thing. So it could work favorably and also not. So Yeah, I was excited. I was excited to get my teeth stuck in and see where I could take it and see how long I could stay in for.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, it's an advantage and a disadvantage because we saw you not really been the spotlight really for that long, whereas on Robbie, the other hand, who wasn't very well known, was put on the hot seat straight away on, well, most of the cast of celebrities, so why?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was kind of how it went, you know. Like Robbie, I know that Vanda got a lot of heat early on, and I think around episode 3 or 4, maybe the room switched to me. I think, but actually. It was actually when you break it down, a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh," and they get nervous when you've got suspicion or pressure on you. For me, it was actually a good thing
Oh,
because
okay.
when I went into the game, I was like, "There's 2 ways that you can play it," in my mind. So I was really relieved when I wasn't selected as a traitor because I didn't think that I could pull it off. And
Okay.
it was really hard work for them because
Mm,
although they can see everything going on, it's a really hard balancing act. I think looking for moves and uh, trying to sustain what the gameplay current all the time. So I was kind of thinking, I think I want to be faithful. I think it will just naturally be easier for me to just work the room that way. So I was very relieved when I wasn't selected. And my strategy was if I can last maybe to day 4 or day 5, kind of being under the radar, then I slowly wanted to build suspicion because I liked the idea that if you had enough suspicion on you that you potentially could be a traitor, then traitors would leave you alone because they would
mm,
go, "We're going to get this girl banished naturally. We don't have to do anything. We'll just let the group sort it out."
yeah.
And I actually liked that because my mentality was like, okay, well, if I have enough questions around me, then at least at night I can sleep soundly, knowing that I'm probably not going to get murdered. And in a weird way, my brain was kind of going, you've got control to a sense. Like it means
Mm,
that that's one thing that you can control. Where so much of the game can be out of your control with the traders conducting how they want the game to go. So, yeah, I guess that was how I wanted it to be under the radar for as long as I could sustain it and then slowly build suspicion to keep me in and just
yeah.
hope like hell that things would happen that would change the direction of the game, which they did. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, buddy, what a roller coaster.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. It's actually so interesting to hear you say that you would have much rather been a faithful than a traitor, because everyone I've spoken to, they've all wanted to be a traitor, because at least that way, you know, the game is really in your hands and you kind of
Mm,
have all the cards out, and it just depends how you play the cards and how you
mm,
move around. Whereas in your
mm.
case, maybe having all those cards out, like there could be a lot of like, you know, pressure, quite stressful. You might slip up, and that's how you get banished. But at least with your way, like, you know, being a faithful, you just don't have that pressure, and you're kind of just going day by day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And you can look for opportunities as well. And one thing that I did during the game is that obviously we didn't have phones or I didn't even bring a watch for goodness sake. So
Oh wow.
I had no concept of time. So when you would go back to your rooms after we had finished filming for the day, that I had no idea how long I had been there for, what the time was. Like when I woke up, I just made the executive decision that I'd just wake up naturally and then have a shower and get ready and stuff and just wait. But there was so much waiting. And the longer that you would wait, like the more psychotic you would feel. You're like, oh man, is it all over? And then somebody would knock at your door and they'd be like, pack up your stuff. You're like, oh, okay, well, I've been cut. And they're like, no, we're just you're moving rooms. So there was all this stuff happening to us all the time. Although we were in a really beautiful place, the mental torture was something that I didn't expect to be as intense as it was when we were filming. Like they really outdid themselves in terms of like making us paranoid.
Yeah.
Which I think you can see that. And the longer that you're in the game, the worse it is. So Yeah, it's so much harder, and especially with audiences critiquing on the couch, you kind of forget that, remember, you're seeing even more than what everyone else is seeing in the game. So you see the Traitors' perspective and the Faithful's perspective. So for an audience, it's like, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
But it really isn't. It's really not when you're playing it. It's just insane. It's insane.
Have you been watching the Traitors Australia season 2?
I have. Oh my goodness.
So I just want to say I'm a massive Sam fan. I know that everyone is you either love him or you hate him, but just with how he's able to move throughout the game, like every week I was like, nah, he's done. He's finally cooked, and then somehow he skates by. It was
crazy, right? But then as the audience, when you're watching it, it's like, you idiots. How come you can't see that? But then because you're under this spotlight of scrutiny where everything that you do, like every movement or body language or like a look or the tone, you're so paranoid that if it's such an unnatural environment. So with him, like at the round tables, how Sam would like shift it, and they'll be like, Sam, I think you're the traitor. He goes, well, I think you're the traitor. And then everyone was like, yeah, it's too obvious, and it's maybe in a normal environment, people would be like, it's Sam. But because it's this unnatural world that the bubble that you're in, you question absolutely everything that's going on. So you go, oh, I think it is too obvious, maybe. Which is why the format is just so fascinating to watch, because audiences are screaming at their TV going, what are you doing and why did you do that? And it is so intriguing actually unwrapping it to understand what was happening in their head or how they were perceiving things at the time. And unfortunately with editing, you don't get to see that. So what I found, like for the cast with us, was a lot of them were like, oh, I wonder why they didn't show that conversation that we had, or like if we were having a one-on-one conversation with the camera, how you would see those clips of us going, I think it's such and such. I was always intrigued as to why they didn't show certain things, because in my mind it might have showcased the story a little bit more. But of course, like we were filmed for 12 hours a day, and there's like 19 people. Can you imagine the monstrosity of editing and content? They're like totally crazy. So
that's probably one of the hardest things as a producer or an editor. It's been like, okay, we have so many different conversations happening, across, because how many days was it per banishment?
So I understand that Australia was way different. So potentially maybe the budget, but the way that we did it, we smashed it out in 10 days. So so the whole entire filming was 10 days.
Oh, wow.
So we played as you saw it. So there was no like constructed production intervention at all. It was like, show up, we're filming as is in situ right now, and the game played and the filming played along with the game. So we had the 10 episodes. Well, that's because we filmed for 10 days, and that was kind of how the voting ended up in the end. And I know that the Australian one went to 9 because of how the game played out, 9 episodes. So but I know that they filmed for a really long time because they were able to. But we had like banishments every night, breakfast every morning, and I know that they had a different setup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it must be quite hard finding, especially everything in one day on, okay, how can we fit all these different conversations to show a story in only like an hour-long episode, right? It must be quite hard to fit everything.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying, like, there was so much content for them to pick through, and it's like, how do they create the storyline out of what happened? And they kind of they did such an amazing job, and it was really exciting for us to see as well, because we only saw the first 2 episodes in advance, maybe like 2 weeks prior to the show airing, but we were watching with you guys. So when episode 3 came out, we were watching for the first time with the rest of the world, and that was terrifying. because I was like, oh my God, what are they going to show? Yeah, it was such a buzz. And I know a lot of us pre-watched it, like as soon as it launched on 3 Now, a lot of us were like, refresh.
Yeah, yeah.
To watch it first to be like, hey, prepare yourselves for, you're going to look like a ding dong in this, saying this, or, it was, quite terrifying watching yourself going, oh shit, how am I going to come across here?
Yeah, definitely. But something I loved about Traitors New Zealand, though, compared to a lot of other, sort of New Zealand shows or international shows, is that I really feel like our sort of culture, because, I'm from Mount Maunganui, but I live in Auckland at the moment. I felt a lot of our, like, classic New Zealand culture really showcased throughout the whole season. Like, a lot of our humor, our banter. There's that one mission at Sheep World or something like
Oh,
that.
so
Or on that
good.
farm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. And yeah, I feel like a lot of the sort of classic Kiwi moments was actually kind of shown throughout the show, which I thought was really lovely to see.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, you're so right. And it was simple. And it goes to show that it's not saying that the production was simple, but it didn't need to be overproduced. They casted the show incredibly well. And we did simple missions. I know a lot of people are like, oh, the lodge's budget and it's not a castle, but it didn't actually matter when you watch the series. Us having a significantly less budget than other formats, I think what we created was really beautiful and down to earth. And also, like, they didn't need to construct a storyline where it made people nasty or mean or really critical of one another, which isn't your typical, like, I guess, what people expect out of reality television. But it was still brilliant. And all the cast are seriously incredibly wonderful people. And I think that's probably the best thing that we've all taken out of it is friendships for life, because we've had that weird bonding experience where it's just amazing people, far out. South Pacific Pictures casted perfectly. I don't think we could have got a better crew. Truly.
Yeah, it's like, I personally think Traitors New Zealand is the best traders in the globe at the moment, and that's not me being biased. I've seen the second Australian one, I've seen the start of the first Australian, I've seen wee bits and bobs of UK and US, but I don't feel that natural, like, gravitation towards it like I did with New Zealand. Yeah, and I feel like the gameplay as well was very
it was really good.
Yeah.
And what I really liked about our gameplay was classic Kiwis. I mean, as you know, it got kind of harder for us at the end because we were so good at identifying traitors, as it made it almost harder for us at the end because we were bringing in faithfuls, so they weren't OG traitors anymore, which mentally made it quite hard for us to know that we were turning on one another. But what I really liked about it is that when we were identifying traitors or discussing it, we were actually quite methodical and strategic and tried to cut the emotion out of it as much as we could, and actually looked for evidence-based theories rather than just like massive pylons. And it's savage because statistically you do have to get rid of your own. Like, faithful have to go. There's no two ways about it. But I think we did like traitor, faithful, traitor, faithful, traitor, traitor. You know, like that was insane. And to be able to get the majority votes, which is also a really hard thing to do, to be like, who's going to organize this and be like, is this what we're doing? It was, and also you got to be so careful if have that leader type personality. I tried to avoid that at all costs, because I had seen that if you were showed that you were good, or if you had any leadership skills, or if you could hold the room, then that was a target. So I kind of positioned myself where I was like, I'll go with you. Even though I kind of knew to myself that I was like, okay, that's who I suspect is likely a traitor. I've seen these certain things happen. Or my big thing was looking at the votes strategically, how the votes were. And every time I would go back to my room, I would write down who said what at each banishment. So I'd be
okay.
like, what was behind them? Why did they say that when they were putting down like the vote? I'd be like, okay, that seems kind of like a wasted vote, or was that strategic to make it not look like that they were a traitor? Or so I don't know, maybe Kiwis, we were quite methodical about selecting who was going to go. Yeah. Oh, so hard thinking about it. Seeing Mike Puru go and Kings and Vander. Oh my gosh, it was just such a and I mean all of them. Every time you had to take someone out, actually, even when it was traitor, you felt terrible because you were cutting off people's opportunity to play the game, and it was fun to play.
Yeah,
you know?
I was just about to bring Mike up actually, where like talking about getting rid of like faithfuls and kind of like reading the room. Were you aware that because I know Dylan was very aware and he went very hard at Mike for it, that Mike wasn't as like celebrating as much when Lauren got
I
banned?
didn't see it because a lot of that was the beauty of the round table, is because where you were positioned. So I was sitting next to Colin and Juzzy, Justine, or at the start, I think Chris might have been next to me, but poor Chris didn't last that long. So I couldn't actually see, and I think Mike was next to Colin, so I couldn't see his facials. I could only see right, like straight across from me and the front of the table. So no, I missed that. When Mike went, I didn't want to vote out Mike, but I was in the same position. I think Brody might have touched on it. They showcased Brody going, I don't want to do it, but I know that that's where the room is going. And you kind of have to go. It's like, it's such a savage game where pylons to a degree almost naturally have to happen in the game. And if you kind of pipe your head up and vote for somebody else, then it's kind of like, oh, why did you do that?
Yeah, definitely.
You don't want any spotlighting to happen. You want to be like as DL as possible for as long as you can before that starts looking suspicious. So, yeah, it's psycho. And a lot of people go, oh, it's so easy, but it's really not, because every little thing that you do can be taken out of context.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because something that Chris and I have chatted about a lot is that he said that he'd be quite scared going to play Traitors, because just the tiniest thing, you can breathe oxygen in the wrong way and everyone's like, there's a traitor, there's a traitor. So it'll be so hard, especially once that suspicion is on you. Like we saw it with poor Robbie. Once I got a little bit of suspicion on her, she just could not shake it throughout the entire game.
And it keeps coming back. And do you know what's totally wild is that because we weren't really talking, none of the cast after we finished filming really talked to each other. So we weren't, a lot of, some cast wanted to know, that had gone early, wanted to know the outcome of the game. But the majority actually didn't. The majority wanted to be like, keep me in the dark, don't tell me what happened. Like, I know Dylan didn't want to know, Colin. There was a big, Justine, I don't think Brody I can't remember actually. But there was a big portion of people that didn't want to know. And so it was really exciting for them. And I didn't know until like 2 weeks before it aired that Robbie wasn't an original traitor. Right? Like for 6 months, I thought that she was original.
Oh, wow.
Like that's how much of a brain fog, like that's how much I was manipulated to think that had happened. Crazy, eh?
Yeah, that is nuts. Yeah, I felt so bad for Robbie, because Hamish and I, we did, meme and joke about her quite a bit on the podcast, which I'm really sorry, Robbie, if you felt bad for that. But I just found that it would just be the tiniest thing she would say or something she would do. It would just turn everyone against her. And I just felt so bad for her. And the one time she was a traitor, that's where she gets eliminated. It's so sad.
Can you imagine how frustrating that would have been, like standing up and knowing that you were brought in as the patsy and not being able to say, well, I wasn't, but I am now, And
Yeah.
and then for us to be all like, I knew it. I mean, I think because Anna and I were on the blowout on the phone, and she goes, "Oh, it was so crazy about Robbie." And I go, "What do you mean about Robbie?" And she goes, "She was a patsy." And I go, "I?" And she goes, "Yeah, like Brooke and Dad brought her in." And I was like, "What?" I had no idea. So, and to everyone else, like, what a smart play! It's so obvious. But I truly had no idea. And the crazy thing is, my gameplay was, and I know you guys talked about it, was on day 2, I think it was, and they didn't show my strategy because I was trying to work through like evidence-based stuff. So I was like, okay, well, this happened. On day 2, we were in the car, and I think the night before, Robbie had said something like, I'm going to be too drunk to murder anyone. But in that game, you can make those you can make those comments, but in the game where everybody's psycho, you can't make those comments because everyone's like, what does that mean? You wouldn't say that if it wasn't front of your mind and you were thinking, like if you were a traitor. And then in day 2, we had that incident in the car. And I think Kings was in the front seat, Robbie was driving, I was in the back, Chris was in the middle, and Mike was on the other side. And she said something, she was talking about Kimberly, we were right to get rid of her, And so Mike and I went, what? And it seemed to be we were the only ones that heard it. And my mind was kind of like, when I'm driving, I'm trying to explain to you guys so you can understand how the end game played out. In my mind, if I'm driving, I'm the driver, and I've got somebody in the front seat, I would say we were right to get rid of her in a way. If I was having a conversation with the person that was next to me in the front, and Kings was in the front, and they were having, this conversation, and we were like the 3 kids in the back. And then my brain was, oh my gosh, I think it's Robbie and I think it's Kings because of that conversation. And then Chris went, she got murdered. And I thought it was like this pincer movement where all of us in the back seat were going to get taken out. So on day 2, I thought my game was up. I was like, wow. I'm in this car with this situation. And it wasn't even anything like that. So it was crazy. And so I hung on to that going, should I think, and when Robbie got voted out as a traitor, I was like, I think my theory is right. Maybe it is, maybe it is Kings. And so there's just so much stuff that went on where, didn't get airtime. And so people were trying to explain what they thought was happening, but you didn't get to see it. So a lot of the time people would be so shocked at a round table or like a move, like with the Anna move, for example, nobody really got the insight as to where that came from. And I think it made it more exciting for television because everyone was like, what the hell? Like, why did you do that? We can talk about that if you want, because I know a lot of people think, why?
Well, we'll definitely get into that in just a second. But a question I do have is, so you and Kings and Philly as well for a small bit had a bit of a rivalry on the show. And with Kings especially, did it start from that comment Robbie made in the car, and that's why you guys couldn't really, that's why you didn't really trust him throughout the game?
No, not really. So I think it's maybe like day 2 or the night that Mike got voted out. So I think that was episode 2. That I got those 2 votes from Philly and Kings out of nowhere. So, but there was no explanation. And so I thought that was odd, but I never, ever voted for Kings, not once.
Yeah, no, that is actually crazy to think about.
Yeah, which is crazy because everyone's like, oh, you guys had this beef. And I was like, did we? Because I didn't ever vote for him. It was always kind of like in the back of my mind. And I love Kings. And with Philly, I think a vote went for Philly. Sorry, I'm just trying to reflect back. Oh, that was after the barrel mission, eh?
Yes.
I actually tried to stop that from happening.
Oh, really?
Which they didn't show. So I think they showed a clip of all of us that kind of got shafted after that, thinking that we were going to make some sort of assessment, for especially those players that were at risk of maybe getting murdered and that hadn't been to the armory before. And there was a whole group of us. And that was a hard challenge physically for a lot of people. And Robbie kicked ass, Vander, Sam, he's got MS, that was a really hard challenge for them. And they all really worked incredibly hard. And a lot of those people really deserved to go. And I think with Philly, he was really nervous that he was going to get murdered. Mm-hmm. And my perception of it with him crossing over twice was that he was panicked. So I was like, that's a move of a faithful, because he's panicked that he's going to get taken out. So in my mind, that's a faithful thing to do. And I think they showed me when we were all kind of all pissy and dark that everybody had gone to the armory and we'd been shafted. And I said, I think I was saying to the team, I was like, I think he's just nervous. I think he's really, really nervous. And I tried to slow it down, but you can't, when everybody's kind of on it and emotionally annoyed. And then we'd had that, was it the night before, that weird interaction between Robbie and Philly about something that was said? About all of us were confused. It was kind of feeding into that. And I think they actually showed a clip of me when we were voting. I went for Philly because I was like, I've got to go with the crowd. Yeah. And I don't want to turtle head up because that could spotlight me as being good, or I've got to go with the crowd. But to make a point, we were about halfway through the voting, and I turned to Jazzy and I said, it's not him. It's not Philly. And she was like, and of course it wasn't. But we tried, it was such a savage game. I don't think really anybody had beef. I have no idea. I really have no idea where the Kings and Philly original votes for coming for me came from, because there was never actually any explanation. Yeah. So it was out of the blue. It was totally out of the blue.
Yeah, because we see right at the very end, Brooke, he's campaigning really hard to get rid of Colin at this point, and he sits you two down and he's trying to work you guys out, but but it just can't be worked out, unfortunately. Do you know potentially why King, especially towards the end, didn't really want to work with you?
I don't think Kings and I really got the opportunity to actually talk one-on-one. So a lot of the conversations that we had together were almost orchestrated. So that conversation that we had with Brock in the middle, that was a really amazing play by Brock as a traitor, because it was kind of orchestrating and feeding into the distraction of what it was. So when you actually unpack it, that was amazing gameplay by Brooke going, I know that this is a thing and we've got to keep feeding it, because it's providing a distraction for the faithful, that we're going to focus on this. And then hopefully, in his mind, either Kings or I will go. And then it's just another easy way for us to keep culling out faithfuls to get him closer to the finish line. That night, though, and Kings and I actually, I think it was we got together on the final day. It was episode 9 and 10. It was really cool. Some of us cast got together and we hired out a movie theater to watch the last 2 episodes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. And Kings was like, far out, man. I reckon we could have taken it right to the end if we had actually got the opportunity to talk to one another. But it just never came about. And probably the proudest moment that I actually had in the game, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, this is where you fucked up and got yourself banished, which is true. Yeah. But I was really stoked because I was so convinced in my head. I was like, surely, okay, Robbie's an original traitor. He's in the front seat. Kings has been doing weird stuff. And then, you've got Anna was really convinced that it was Kings, and I really trusted Anna. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, I think this is the next move we're going to play. And then it was like this amazing epiphany in the middle of the round table, which, mind you, is the most stressful time in the game. because you're like, don't like screw up, and you've got like
Yeah.
film cameras right there, and you're like, oh my God, like what's on my face?
Yeah.
It's like, it's so intense. And you know, like I'm trying to explain my theory of what I think has happened in that round table, which you saw, where I was like, excuse my language, I was like, for fuck's sake, like stop coming for me, because he just kept coming. Yeah. And so I was day 9, I was done. Like, I was like, it's not me. Like, what the hell? And then, so I kind of like got stuck in, and I don't regret it, but I was really frustrated by that point.
Yeah.
And so we're having like, it's not an argument. You're trying to get your feelings across, and Brooke's sitting there like delightfully pleased. He's just like, let him go. Like, let him go for it. And then he was like, it's he starts talking about distractions. And then I went, boom, like this light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, it's Brooke. And I was like, this is a distraction. This is a distraction. And I'll tell you why I voted for Anna. Okay. Because everyone was like, why did you do that? You're so dumb, blah, blah, blah. So I thought that there was still one more murder to go.
Okay.
Okay. So that round table, I was like, okay, somebody's going to get murdered after this round table. I don't want it to be me. And so my theory was, so I had this light bulb. I go, cool, we're in this massive ruse. This is a distraction. It's not Kings. And at the last minute, I was like, Sam thinks it's maybe Anna. We talked about that. Maybe it's Anna. Anna hasn't had one vote this entire game. She's just been totally clean. The rest of us, aside from Sam, actually, I think Brooke had put Sam's name up as a joke. And I was like, it could be, but I think it's Brooke, but I don't want to write Brooke's name down, because if I write his name down, then I feel like he'll take me out. So I was like, it could be Anna, it could be Brooke, go Anna, and then come up with a story why you think it's probably going to be Anna.
Yeah.
And all like kind of at the last minute, I was like, shit, I've got to do something. I can't vote Kings, because from a integrity thing, I need to prove to myself that it's not him. So I was like, I know that it's not him. I feel like this is a ruse. It's a distraction. And then, of course, it was. But that Anna vote really did that was like for me. Because, and in hindsight, it's a really beautiful thing. You know, like when they tried to, I think Brooke and Colin tried to murder Anna with the shield, everybody was like, why didn't Julia just say to Anna, why would I try and murder you when obviously I didn't have the shield? And at the time, I didn't even think of that. I was like, oh, wow. I didn't even think of that until I saw somebody's comments on Reddit. I was like, actually, damn it, why didn't I say that? Damn it. We should have, but you don't. There's so much stuff that you don't think about when you're playing. So, it was crazy. So, and then obviously everybody was pretty upset, and it was really upset that I had gone for her after our like girl power, 9-10 days, and that just set me up for Brooke's wonderful next move. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's something as well that I just thought of now, is that you could have even potentially been like, it's between me or Kings. So the fact that I even put a vote on you shows that I'm faithful. Because why would I risk my game? Yeah.
Why would I risk it? But I actually, I remember Brooke actually said, oh, Julia, I think it shows that you are playing with your heart on your sleeve, which I was. I genuinely was at that stage, because I was so tired that I just was like, I want to play with integrity now. I'm like, it's a really hard emotional thing for you, like as a person, because you're trying to showcase skill and talent and not look like a dick. And there's or that you're dumb. Because remember, like, it was actually quite a nerve-wracking experience sitting down with the camera, and there's nobody in the room. It's just the camera, and then the producer or whoever's kind of prompting you questions would be like, how are you feeling right now? And you'd be like, I'm feeling like shit. You're trying to not look I was always really conscious that if I was voicing who I thought it was, that potentially I was voicing who it wasn't, and then I was going to look like a total egg when it came on television. So I was really quite nervous to come forward with what I actually thought was going on. So I did keep a lot of that stuff to myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just speaking about online stuff. I know this is a bit different to what we're talking about, but I remember, I believe it was you. You posted something about online trolls.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it sort of like, I guess, like fan reception to you and the online reception to you?
Yeah.
About
I
the
mean,
show?
you're never going to have everybody that likes you, right? Like it's
Yeah.
impossible. But the majority of it, I would say 95% has been really positive.
Oh, awesome.
Which is really great.
Yeah.
There's only been like a few messages that I've had or like comments, and people are pathetic. Like there was comments
Yeah.
about the way that my jeans, like tell that woman to not wear such tight jeans, or like the blonde's got to go, or she's an idiot. And what I found really fascinating, and it's probably based on my time in the police as well, is that people have that bias against potentially what somebody looks like. I've got the blonde hair or whatever. And so they just automatically put me into this box that I'm probably stupid, or I might be, not playing a good game. But when you actually unravel it, I played equally just as good a game as so many of the players, and better than a lot, but I was still not good enough. And so it was really interesting going, funny how, like with New Zealand, how we absolutely played a blinder of a game in terms of finding traitors. And when you compare that to other global formats, I was still hammered for being stupid. And I'm like, how funny is that? That you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. No matter how good you are, it's still never going to be good enough. But I actually loved that lesson as well, because I was like, I don't care, because I know that I played a really good game. Especially when you compare it worldwide and some of the records that we got. I know that we were easily scoring the best in the world in terms of strategy and locating traitors. So far out.
Yeah.
I mean, for little old New Zealand, it's pretty good.
Yeah, all 6 traitors, I think you guys all voted out. And I don't think any other franchise has been able to do that. I think, I forgot which one, but I know that one season, like there's only one other season where the Faithfuls have actually won, whereas all the other ones, the traitors, have won. Yeah, no, you guys did a fantastic job finding all the traitors.
Yeah.
And that sort of leads me, when the game sort of first started, who are your potential original thoughts on who the traitors could have been?
Like when it first started?
Yeah. So once the traitors were selected, like, did you have a sort of, a good idea on who they could have been?
I to be honest, I didn't. Like, how some people go, oh, immediately, I think it's this. But you really can't in that game. You can't. You have to be kind of looking for things, or trying to spot things that might have been different, or interactions, or like feedback from other people. So for me, I never really went out like guns blazing thinking it was going to be a certain person, or I think I wrote down in my diary names. But in a game like this, you kind of have to let it play out a little bit. Because, I mean, for us to get Lauren on the first, like, that was out of control. And the only reason that I put Lauren was we had the first day, Lauren and I had a little conversation, and Lauren is delightful. She is such a nice person. And then the next morning, I only picked up, and I feel stink because my vote was a vibe vote, because I didn't know Lauren.
Okay. Yeah.
So it wasn't like evidential or anything like that. It was purely the vibe. And we had a conversation on the couch, and I just went, I feel like you are different to how we were interacting yesterday. And that was all I had. And then the rest, and then I could understand that I could see that the room was kind of going that way. And then what solidified it, gave me the seal of approval, was Sam's speech in that round table saying, I know you, and there has been a change. And I went, okay, well, I can see where the room's going. I got to go that way anyway. So, I mean, some of it was I got the vibe, but I mean, with Lauren, that was like pretty lucky for me because I didn't know Lauren, and I had the advantage that other people did know her. And I felt so stink that she was taken so quickly, but is what it is. And then the other ones, who went next? Was that Matt?
Yeah, Matt was the next traitor. They got banished.
Yeah. So I think people were kind of vibing on Matt because of his votes, the way that his voting had been. So it was kind of going against the grain, which, remember, like we talk about, you kind of got to go with things. And so he was, I think probably the way that we perceived his gameplay was, he was like, I'm not going to go with the grain. I kind of want to stay out. And we thought that was unusual. And and then Brody was like really set. I didn't know actually that Brody was thinking potentially it was me, so that was really lucky that that night. That round table was intense because it was between Matt or myself, but that round table actually set me up for the rest of the game, I think.
Okay, like because kind of throughout the game we sort of saw you're always in like a group of people, and it was always like Sam, Anna, and Colin, and sort of Brody was attached to that as well. At what point did you guys sort of form your sort of like group or alliance? Was it after the Matt vote or
sort of, yeah. So the group's kind of changed. Like, I guess that the first couple of days I was with Colin, Juzzy, Sam, and then I think when so Brody and Anna were quite close, and then I think sadly when Brody went, that's when the dynamics changed a little bit again. And I don't know what, I think it's just human nature. So I was really drawn to like Justine, for example, because she's got such a beautiful, fun energy about her. And she kept me I was really nervous that the entire show was just going to be me laughing, because I was stuck usually between Sam and Justine at breakfast, or Colin. And then there was just, you don't see a lot of those conversations that's actually going on at breakfast, but the majority of it was like the complaints about how shit the breakfast was. And then a little bit of banter. And then also I was really concerned that all it was going to be was me eating and me laughing the whole entire time, because I was really, truly having a lot of fun as well. It was just, I guess you kind of are drawn to people that, I don't know, I just fell into, that group somehow. It was, but it's hard as well, because when you're an unknown person, you've got to build that rapport as well, naturally as you possibly can, and under such weird circumstances as well. And of course, we could never converse when there weren't cameras there. So all of the conversations were almost like unnatural. So, so it was like, I can't just be like, bleh. I've got to be really cautious with how I interact with these people.
I actually do have a question about the cast. Obviously, you're one of the few normal people to enter the show. Did you recognize any of the comedians or any of the broadcasters that were on the cast with you?
Yes. So when we arrived at the lodge, I immediately recognized Anna and Brody. I think those are the only two people, because I hadn't seen like Brooke, for example. I hadn't seen him for a while, and I think the last time I had any sort of muscle memory with Brooke was he didn't have a beard, and so he was clean shaven, so I couldn't. And he had a hat on the first day. I obviously recognised Justine. Didn't know who Sam was, and then even when Paul Henry came out, bless you, Paul Henry, I didn't even recognize that it was Paul Henry because I hadn't seen him in such a long time.
Yeah.
So when he came out, I was like, oh, who is that? And I couldn't place him. I was like, oh, I don't know who that is. And then they were like, it's Paul Henry. And I was like, who's Paul Henry? Oh, Paul Henry. And, you know, and that was such a buzz because I was like, oh my goodness, we haven't seen Paul for such a long time. So I feel really excited that he's the one that's going to be leading us through this.
Yeah. What was your thoughts on Paul Henry as a host?
Oh, he was wonderful. Yeah. And we actually, the interactions that we had with Paul was as you saw it, like we really didn't see him much. So we would have breakfast, and those breakfast scenes might be like an hour of us actually legitimately eating breakfast and having conversations. And then Paul would flint in and say, hello, take a picture of him off the wall, and then he'd be gone. And we were never allowed to interact with him. So we weren't able to like have general conversation. It just wasn't, it just didn't happen. So it was actually quite hands-off with the interactions that we had with him. It wasn't until the end actually on that day 10 when I finally got taken out, and it's quite savage. Like, you know, when you see somebody get banished, they legitimately walk out the door, get in a car, and they're out. Like,
oh wow,
there's no hugs and kisses goodbye. There's nothing like that. It's like, it's pull the band-aid off, you're out of the game, see you later. And I can't imagine what it would have been like going kind of early in the game, because then you've got this massive FOMO that you've got no idea what is going to be the outcome of the game. Whereas with me, you know, I wasn't murdered, so I didn't get to experience what that was like receiving a letter. But with me getting banished right at the very end, it was slightly different because I didn't get put in a car and taken away. You know, the others wrapped filming maybe an hour or so later. But it was cool. I had finished doing my conversation with the camera after I got banished, and came out of the room, and Paul had obviously finished filming, and he gave me a big cuddle, and he was like, you played so incredibly well. And
that's awesome.
He goes, are you looking forward to going home? And I said, yes, can't wait to go home. And I think he said something like, you know, what are you looking forward to the most? And I said, patting my dog's ears, because I just miss the dogs so much. Where are the kids? Or the partner? Just want to see the dogs, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I know that the Hamish is the exact same. He will cut anyone just to pet a dog. He's like, nah, move up the way. It's dog time.
Yeah, me too, man. Yeah. That was cool.
I do have a question about breakfast. This is a question from one of our listeners. Was there any classic Kiwi breakfasts on the table, like your Marmite, your Weet-Bix?
Nah, man. Nah.
Wow.
It was all kind of like cold ciabatta, butter, floury apples. Mind you, the food actually got better the smaller the group became. That's what I acknowledged, was that when we started kind of thinning back on the cast, then the food suddenly improved.
Okay.
Yeah, probably the most savage morning was the morning that Brooke, Anna, and I got kidnapped. And that was crazy. So that was probably the craziest day for filming for me, because every morning we would get up, I'd wait around and then have a knock on the door, and then we had to put on these like Kmart, or they're either Kmart or warehouse robes, and then be transported around in the vehicles which you couldn't see in. So nobody knew where anybody was placed. And I went down to the breakfast room, and there was a room to the side where you'd get your mic put on, and that was kind of like the routine. And I was like, cool, I believe I've made another day. I've managed to get through again, and got my mic put on. And then they were like, Julia, come back and get into the car. And I was like, oh, like I wasn't going into breakfast. I was like, oh no, like, is this I've been murdered or something? And they're like, we're just going to put a blindfold on you now. I was like, what? What's happening? And now we're back. And I get car sick, like terribly car sick. And so we're in the back seat, and none of the crew or anything will talk to you because they just gaslight you. You'll be like, "How's your day going?" And then be like, "Nothing. I'm giving you nothing." And then we drove. It felt like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I thought, this is excessive for a murder, like to build up anticipation. Maybe they're doing this deliberately, so I'm more emotional when I receive my letter that I've been murdered or something. And then we parked up somewhere. We stopped. And one of the crew was like, "Oh, here's your breakfast, but you can't take your hood off. You have to sit in the back seat of the car, like eating under your hood." And I had cold eggs Benedict and like this brown. I was like already feeling terrible after being driven around for an hour and a half with a sack over my head. To have cold eggs Benedict and like wilted spinach and but I ate it.
Gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, that was savage. They didn't really like showcase that, but when we took our hoods off, that was like the first time we were like, "What the hell is going on?" Like, it was crazy. So, but fun, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just one of my questions. I'm glad you answered it. Like, did they just put like a sack over your head and they're like, "All right, come with us. You're going to the wharf"? But no, it sounds
they didn't
like
tell
a
us
lot more
anything.
intense.
So we got led in with the mask and I found it really hard to breathe with it over. So what I would do is I would like hang my hands on the base of it to create a bit of a gap to breathe. But it was really, as you saw it, like what the lengths that they went to really disorientate us and to throw us off was extreme. And I mean, they did it so well. Like, we really had no idea what the hell was going on at any time. And the moment that you thought that you were kind of in a routine or in a rhythm, then it would change. It was like, "Oh, well, this isn't happening anymore." Yeah.
So sort of towards the very end, you know, we sort of see it's Brooke, Anna, Sam, and obviously you've cast your vote for Anna the previous round table, and Anna wasn't too happy about that. Did you think that Colin was ever potentially a traitor towards the end?
Yes. So that was another frustrating thing about the edit. So you know where I went to my day spa?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to drive back to Auckland for that. So yeah. So the lodge was up north. It was about an hour and a bit drive. And I had a crew person in the passenger seat, and I was driving. And they were like, "Julia, we want you to, because you're by yourself, make sure that you voice your current opinions of what you think is happening."
Mm-hmm.
And that morning after breakfast, I think Brooke was talking about like crypto, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, for you to be this level talking about crypto, like I have really underestimated you. Like I'm so sure it's Brooke. I'm 100% sure it's on Brooke." And then it shifted to Colin. So in the car, it's all me going, "It's Brooke and Colin, it's Brooke and Colin, it's Brooke and Colin. How am I going to play this?" Because I somehow have to spotlight Brooke's name, and I feel like potentially they might be coming for me. I really don't know how the votes are going to go. So they didn't show that it was me saying "It's Brooke and Colin, it's Brooke and Colin." And I was a little bit disappointed because I was like, why didn't they show that? But it makes sense because it would have built anticipation. But I think they showed it once that they were like, "Oh, yes," I said, "Yes, I've got my suspicions on Colin, but it's really hard for me to want to like vote out my friend." And it was, I didn't want to vote out Colin because at that late stage in the game, Colin had saved me numerous times. So there was like heaps of votes that could have banished me, but he kept me in. So I was like, I kind of owe him this one. That I didn't want to turn against him. And I knew that it was him. And then I knew that I had to kind of play it like I didn't realize it was him. So at the end, when he went, I was like, okay, time is up. And that was when I voted for Brooke. I was like, far out, I'm in a pickle here because he's gonna. How am I gonna get weasel my way out of this when now it looks like it's me? Yeah, and I kind of knew. I was like, oh wow, I think I'm toast here, but maybe I've got an opportunity to talk to Anna and talk to Sam, but I didn't really get that opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really hard.
Was there not much like strategy talk after Colin went? Like, was it just like the show where we went straight to the final full vote with the fire?
Yeah, we pretty much went straight into, I think we finished that scene, had dinner, and then might have talked for, I really can't remember, but it was very limited. In fact, I don't even think I got to talk. I don't even recall being able to talk to anyone. I think there might have been a shot where Brooke and Sam were kind of like, this is how it needs to go. We've got to get rid of Julia. And what I didn't understand, I was like, oh, come on, Sam, like, see that it's not me, But I was really hard. Brooke played it so incredibly well at the end. He got so close. So we were all separated. We were in like rooms each because you weren't allowed to talk to each other off camera.
Mm-hmm.
So they would ban us from talking, like it was, not part of the, it was against the rules. You weren't allowed to talk. Everything that we had, it had to be caught on film. Now, an incident occurred. So I'm coming for Brooke again because I was like, okay, I think they're going to come for me, but I can set Sam and Anna up to win if I go Brooke, and then they're going to go, it's not Julia, it's going to be Brooke. So I was like, at least I can kind of inject that in. So I'm going to go for Brooke again. And Brooke and I were just about to go to film that scene, and we were in that pool room, and we were being supervised by a member of the crew. And she had her little earpiece in, and she stepped out of the room momentarily. And when she stepped out of the room, Brooke goes, it's not me, it's Anna. And he starts doing, because we would do like sign language, so he's making the A with his fingers. And I was like, A? Like, what do you mean? And he was like, no, it's not me. You've got to believe me. Like, we can win this. Like, you have to believe me. It's not me. It's Anna. You were right. And I was like, what? And I was so tired by that stage where I was like, I don't care anymore. Like, who it is. And it stink. But because it was off camera, I genuinely thought it was sincere. So I was like, maybe this is real. And then, because you're so paranoid all the time, I was like, maybe I've got that wrong as well. Maybe I've misread it. And maybe Anna was going for Colin. Maybe it is Anna, and it's like such a roller coaster. And anyway, that's why I ended up going back to Anna again. Either way, I was toast, but I was really, really worried when I was banished because I could see what Brooke had done. So he was setting it up again for it to go to Anna next. So I would go, and then Sam would go, screw you. It's Anna, because Julia's voted for Anna again. Surely it's Anna, and then Brooke would win.
Yeah.
So amazing gameplay. Like,
I felt
simple, I just got outplayed. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I felt really bad for Brooke in the end, especially because I originally thought that, they're not going to save Julia as a traitor or not. So it's going to be a bit of a big question mark, and then they'll decide. But when they said that, you're not, that you're faithful, not a traitor, I immediately knew that Brooke was out next. And I think he kind of knew too. It's like, like there's nothing more I can really do.
Yeah. It was kind of awful because I had to be weirdly the sacrificial lamb for that to happen. That had to happen to be like, okay, it's him. But I mean, he did the best that he possibly could, setting up that Anna vote for me to go, it's Anna, to give him the best possible opportunity at winning. And bless Brooke, because he didn't want to keep going. And I know
Yeah.
that he had spoken to the producers saying, this is really hard going on me, guys. I don't want to play this game anymore, because he knew that, people deserved it. Like Sam really deserved the win, for example, because, like MS and got 2 boys, and he ended up using the prize money to convert his garage, I think, into an office, so his boys would be able to have their own room. And Anna's
awesome.
Yeah, and Anna's had really poor vision for a long time, and I know that she managed to finally get her eyes lasered. And
that's
yes,
awesome. Yeah,
because a lot of people were like, "Oh, Anna's doing this like stare," but it's purely she just couldn't see.
Oh wow.
Her staring like that at the round table was as a legitimate sight issue, from what I understand. And I was so stoked for them to take it out. I was gutted, because I was like, I would have really liked to be part of the 3 and be to say, hey, yeah, I was, the one of the 3 to win it. But I mean, for entertainment purposes and for television, I don't think it could have ended a more exciting way, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially because I feel like you had probably the best traitor at the very end in Brooke, and
yes,
like the faithful of all faithfuls at the very end, and
yes,
Sam,
totally.
right? So yeah, it was an epic final 3.
Yeah, it really was. And I mean, those, people are like, oh, and some people I've seen the comments going, oh, Sam and Anna had an easy ride. They never got spotlighted on them. But in actual fact, they played a really hard game as well, because they didn't have any pressure on them. That put them at risk of being murdered every single night. So I know that it was really nerve-wracking for Anna and Sam. And so it was such a big thing for them to get, like the shield and stuff. That was a massive thing, because I had a lot of suspicion, so I could weirdly sleep comfortably. I just had to defend myself in a banishment, which was the way I wanted to play it. But for them, they were just at risk the whole time, because they were so faithful. It's still, there's no hard or easy way through that game. It's kind of, you pick which route you're going to take in terms of how you're going to play it strategically. And those guys played a beautiful game and absolutely, hands down, deserved the win. It's so easy for people to sit back and go, oh, they should have done this and should have done that. But really, it was such an incredible game that they played. Luck, strategy, so many things come into play with being able to last that long, because the odds are not in your favor to last right to the end. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Were there any players in your mind think played a great game or a fantastic game, but wasn't really shown in the edit as much?
Yes. So I was really gutted that they didn't showcase too much on Vanda. So Vanda is a beautiful human being, and it was hard for Vanda, because she was a normal unknown person, and she was in amongst a group of loud people. Like, I'm naturally a loud person, and you've got Brooke and, really charismatic vocal leading type of people. So for me, I knew that I just had to shut up. But for Vanda, it was quite hard, because a lot of people talked over the top of her when she would have a really valid point. So, for example, she called it being Dan, and I think we were doing the barrels, and she was like, I think it's Dan. I think it's Dan, guys. But nobody would listen to her. And so it was really hard. I tried to orchestrate a number of times to be like, guys, just dial it back, let Vanda talk. And I think that was probably my biggest disappointment in the game, was that Vanda actually flourished beautifully throughout the game. So she went from trying to find her voice and finally found it, and became confident within the game of being able to be like, no, you guys be quiet, and we need to actually talk about this. Stop talking about yourselves, and let's actually focus on the strategy of the game. And I saw that as like a change in personality, where I was like, I think she's been seduced or recruited, whatever. But actually, it was Vanda coming out of her shell, and I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. after that banishment, because I saw a beautiful change as a traitorous one.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's a traitor. But it was actually her finally flourishing and coming forward with confidence in herself. And she was right on the money, man. And we just shafted her. We were like, later, Vanda, you're out of here. It was brutal. And she was right on Dan, and they didn't show that. They didn't say, like, really showcase that, you know, Vanda was like, I think it's Dan. And I felt like we got our moment, you know, like I got my moment to be like, it's Dan, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I got that final vote, you know, where everyone was like, yay. But they didn't get that with Vanda. And I thought, oh, you know, she was a really good player, but she was in a group of really loud people. Yeah, I mean, it's just people in general. But she was beautiful, a total delight. And she was my little buddy at the end of that barrel challenge when everybody was kind of going for each other's throats. Vanda and I just sat down and let everybody kind of go for it. Her and I had that, I think, beautiful connection where we kind of tried to stay out of a lot of the confrontation, I guess. And hilariously, that round table, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so funny that happened. Dan, being the brilliant human that he is, took that as an opportunity, potentially knowing that Vanda was onto him, and set it up to be like, oh, Vanda, I noticed that you weren't engaging with any of the group when we were having a Barney. And I was like, oh, I think she's right. You know, like I started going, you know what, I think it's Dan as well, because it was that moment. She brought it up in the car, and then he kind of orchestrated, Vanda, I think it's you because you weren't engaging with the conversation. And I think actually Vanda may have been the catalyst for us all going for Dan like 2 days later.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of that wasn't shown, you know.
Yeah.
So kudos to Vanda for actually being a secret weapon.
Yeah, great job to Vanda. Something I do got to bring up, you actually broke Hamish's heart because we watched all the episodes together. But when you pulled up that final vote for Dan, Hamish was torn. He's like, you know, but Dan's my boy. But I really like Julia, but she just voted Dan out. Like, oh my God.
I know, man. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, eh?
Yeah.
And I'd held on to that Dan vote, I think, for a couple of days. Because you can't, and it was that barrel challenge that I was like, oh, okay, pretty confident it's Dan. And then I'd seen a couple of weird interactions with him and Robbie as well. And so I was like, okay, I feel like something has happened there. And it was the day that Robbie was seduced, or she was recruited, eh? No. Yeah. Was she seduced?
So she was seduced. She was
blackmailed, eh? They just said, come on in.
Yeah, it's a...
Yeah, so that day I noticed an interaction between those two. But I had to hold on to it, and because you can't like be like, oh, I think it's just in case. So I was like, I've got to wait until other people get the vibe, and then we'll go with the vibe. So I was like, okay, cool, we're here. I think we've got the majority vote now. Now it's time to offload him. So it was, I mean, who was it between? Was it between him and
Vanda?
And Vanda, yeah. And I didn't think that Vanda was a traitor at that stage. I thought maybe she would have been, I thought she was seduced or blackmailed or something later down the track.
Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah, no, it was really heartbreaking to see Vanda go. Especially like something that I loved is how even though Robbie, she really got, you know, the shortest straw in terms of, you know, surviving as a normie, but both you and Vanda, was there any other normal people on the cast apart from you, Vanda, and Robbie?
Chris. Yes, Chris.
Oh, Chris.
Yeah, but Chris was an incredible player, and I was nervous for her because she was vocal. And I didn't want to say, because I at that stage I wasn't too sure. I was like, I'm pretty sure she's a faithful because she is playing quite a hard game. She played her cards too early, poor Chris. And I think she would have actually done really well in the game. But she was so nice, so lovely. quite upfront about asking people questions, and I think that kind of like spotlighted her too much, that she was front of mind for Dan and Matt at that stage. And I wanted to say to her, I was like, oh, just be careful, like don't put too much heat or light on yourself. You kind of want to be a little bit invisible at this early on in the game. You don't want to be like front of mind. So it's far out, man. It's such a hard game to play. Like, what do you think your strategy would be?
Oh, there's a game called Mafia or Werewolf, right? And something about Hamish and I, we first met because he coached me improvised acting in theatre sports, and that's how we sort of became friends. And something we always did is we would play Mafia Werewolf, but we would have to play as like a character, for example. So someone could be like Shrek, someone could be like, Barack Obama, for example. Or we'll just do it normally without characters that change, quite often. But I'm a very loud person. I'm a very, I get bored pretty easily. So sometimes I'll just be like, you know what? I think it's Julia. I've got no evidence whatsoever, but let's go on to Julia.
Do a Kings and Philly, like
just follow Kings Philly. Yeah, it's definitely Julia. I've got nothing to go off, but it's her. Yeah. I think I would probably be more like a Robbie, just someone who would accidentally stitch myself up, even though I'm not.
Well, that was the beautiful thing about Robbie, and Robbie is a gorgeous human being, and she really did play herself, and you cannot come for her for that. Like, she just played with her heart on the sleeve. She said what she was thinking, and I love that about Robbie. She just went in as herself, and playing such a psychotic game. I mean that's almost like strangely very brave, because I didn't really play as myself. I played, in my opinion, quite a strategic game where I wasn't kind of categorizing myself. And a lot of my friends that were watching it were messaging it going, what the hell? You're coming across as so serious, or like, where's the jovial part of you? And I was like, I had to compartmentalize my real self during that game, because I was like, I actually have to play this tactically, and that's how I wanted to play it. Was like, I'm not going to actually really genuinely be myself playing this game. I will be someone else. Like, I will hone into my old policing self. And I actually found that quite hard, because I wasn't playing my true nature. I was genuinely playing it was like because they didn't show it, but I spent the last couple of years, I used to like run a lot of police informants.
Oh, okay.
And so we would have like strategies of and storylines that we would play with informants as well. And so I was like in that mode, trying to play it that way, where I was like, this is savage, but I have to kind of, if I want to do really well in this game, I have to compartmentalize all of my feelings and just play this game. And I'd been out of the police for, like 6 years now. So it wasn't my nature to play like that. And I found that actually really hard towards the end, which is why I think I got quite emotional at the end. And I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to play as myself and actually play with some like feelings and integrity, rather than like just being savage. I love Robbie. She's such a sweetheart, and she really is, like great mum. She's it was sad, but it's human nature, right? And it's a game that you can't have your feelings hurt. It's really, really hard.
Because Hamish and I, we did a 5 players we'd love to see come back for some kind of all-star or returning player season, and Robbie made both of our lists. She brought so much entertainment, as a faithful, and I feel like even if she was a traitor from the start, I feel like she could do really well, especially because she could easily play it off on, everyone thought I was a traitor the first time. This is just how I naturally am. Right. I could easily skate through, So I'd love to see Robbie come back. I do have some final questions to ask you before we wrap up this interview. Okay, first of all, the cryotherapy chamber that you're in for the final mission, how was that? Being negative 140 degrees?
far out, man. I had like obviously the perceived really easy one from out of everybody, but I didn't enjoy it. I don't know how people can enjoy it. Like -140 is actually very cold.
Yeah.
But look, it was only temporary. It was 3 minutes. I was like, just handle it. People are doing horrible stuff, and I was so relieved that I wasn't. I think for me, Colin's one hands down would have been the worst, and he
Okay.
nailed that the eating challenge. Yeah, I didn't enjoy it. I don't know how people like to do that for therapeutic reasons. It's certainly something I wouldn't do again. But yeah, yeah, it's so easy in comparison to everybody else. But I think that actually built the storyline, and the frustration was it's like, I can't believe it. Julia went to like this bar, and we all had to eat eyeballs and sit in maggots and cockroaches.
Yeah.
There was no like I was hilariously a little bit disappointed because I'd seen the BBC final where they had like jet boats and helicopters, and I was like, heck yeah, we're gonna do something awesome. Maybe we're gonna like bungee jump off the Sky Tower or something. And it was like, nah, it's just like maggots, cockroaches, and eating hearts and eyeballs, which is so hilarious.
Yeah, no, it was great. I did find everything quite funny because I feel like it was kind of almost like, you have a snowball coming down a hill and it starts off small and it gets bigger and bigger. Like, I think it started off with you and the cryotherapy. It's like, oh, okay, that's not as bad. Monk haircut. Oh, okay, tattoo. Oh, okay. And then it's Brooke has to be in a bathtub of maggots and cockroaches. Yeah. Colin has to eat a heart. And
honestly, it was like, Brooke. Oh, I felt so bad for Brooke. Just his I was just bent over laughing. It was so funny, but so awful for him at the same time. Yeah.
I found it really funny because obviously only 4 people could do it. Someone had to sit out, and everyone was like, "Oh, Sam's not going to get a hair color, Anna's not going to get a tattoo." It's like, poor Brooke. Like, no one's expecting him to not do
it. Yeah, I think we all came to the conclusion that Anna wouldn't do it because it was the only thing that wasn't permanent. That was permanent. Okay. So I was trying to work it out like from a pattern. If you think about like what are those silly tests where it's like square? What are they called? Like the psychometric testing kind of stuff. And the algorithms. I was like, okay, well, temporary, permanent. And surely she's not going to get a tattoo. But she would have, and it absolutely would have done it if it was, Colin or I getting a haircut, or or if it was, me having to eat something. Anna, do not think that Anna wouldn't have done it, because she would have if the setup was slightly different.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
She 100% would have done it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll get you to rank. What would you have most likely done? 1 being the one that you definitely would have done, and 5 being what you would not have done. So the cryotherapy, if you had to choose between them, like cryotherapy, being in a bathtub of maggots, cockroaches, eating tongue and heart, tattoo or haircut.
Okay, definitely. Like cryo would be easy, obviously. So that would be number 1. 2, I would do maggots.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, like you're all good with cockroaches and maggots?
I'm not all good with them, but I would have done it next. 3, tattoo. 4, haircut. 5, eating.
Fair enough. It's yeah. I mean, I think that the haircut isn't that bad. Like it'll look weird for a while, but then eventually
it would come back. Yeah. I just don't think I could have managed what Colin did. Like I felt it was really hard even for me to watch that. And the fact that he just sat there with a glass of wine staring down the barrel of the camera.
Yeah.
So eloquently. And I mean, Colin is the most beautiful human inside and out. And the way that he was and showed himself on the show, he was just so brilliant and so fast. But Colin, on a personal level, he genuinely has the biggest heart that bleeds for his friends and his loved ones. And
Yeah.
I mean, Colin has done the most beautiful gestures for me coming out of the show, being like a normal person. Everybody has, but Colin especially, he's one of those people that in a room full of opportunities, he speaks your name to help you
Yeah.
come forward. And there was lots of like other, opportunities in terms of television or interviews that Colin, being Colin, a lot of media would want to talk to him and be like, hey, Colin, we want to talk to you. Would you be a guest on this and stuff? And he's like,
Yeah.
no, but Julia will. And so
Yeah.
he's that kind of person who sets you up for success. And he has spent so much of his own time, encouraging me and supporting me, and had a beautiful gesture for even like my mum and my family at our final cast showing at the theatres. Him and his beautiful friend Angelique put like a gift bag together of like beautiful health products and beauty products for my mum, because I brought my parents along with me because I'm very close with my parents. And to think about that, and that wasn't to get kudos. He genuinely wanted to do that for my mum. Like he's just gorgeous, and I love Colin because he stands for what he believes in, and he really appreciates his value as a person. And he played that game. He knew that people were going to come for him, and that challenge, the eating challenge, that's why he nailed that with such beauty and grace. Just like, and he's a beautiful person. Yeah, he truly is.
Yeah. Out of everyone on the cast, I've actually met Colin before. In 2020, he did a lecture for us because I went to a film school, and he gave us a lecture on acting and presenting and stuff. And I was always thinking, wow, he is such a great guy. I actually have the photo we took together on my wardrobe door right now, like in front of my bed. And when I was watching the first episode of Traitors, I was like, hang on, that's Colin! That's Colin! Yeah.
I was really quite, I was a little bit star-studded when I realised who it was, because again, like with Colin, he had the beard, same thing with Brock. I didn't actually recognise him straight away. And then I was a little bit like flustered meeting him, because, when you meet someone that you've seen on television or in magazines and stuff before, I was a little bit like, I was actually quite nervous. So to discover, as the game went on, how much of a beautiful person he was, and so funny, so cheeky and fast on his feet and funny. He just made, like, and Justine and Sam, like, made the game so enjoyable for me, to play, because they're just such great people. Like, it's so hard because you want to be like, oh, they're so amazing, and they're so amazing. Anna's so amazing. And even Anna and I have been out to lunch together, and my mum came along, and just all such cool people. Far out. So lucky, so well casted. Just love everyone. That has been, like I said, the greatest thing coming out of the game is, although we've all got PTSD from playing this bloody treacherous game, was the friendships that we've all managed to form. And it's cool. And I'm so relieved that I did it, because they really did cast us in so well. And I'm really thankful to Shisti and the team at South Pacific Pictures for putting together such a beautiful show, because it's not just great gameplay, which was natural, but the way that they shot it and produced it, and it is beautiful filming, it was awesome. I feel so privileged to have been asked to take part, truly. So
well, that is one of my next questions. If there's ever some kind of all-star or returning player themed Traitors, would you come back to play again?
I'm on the fence, because I felt like I played really well, and I would hate to blow it. If I came back for another season, I felt like I played pretty well, and I would be nervous playing a shit game. Not if and like I got too confident or something, and then did like another season, and then blew out, and then everyone would be like, "See, she was hopeless." So I would be nervous to do another one, but at the same time, I would be excited to come back and give it another crack to see if I could take it out because I got so close. Maybe, yeah. I think I probably would, and I've actually already. I hope she won't mind me saying this. So a lot of us already talk like a lot of the cast from like Australian season 2. We've been talking a lot of it's really quite cool because and same thing with the UK. Like I spoken a lot to Maddie and Kieran from the UK version and stuff. It's when you're on the show, it's kind of like the international formats and cast reach out and like, are you okay coming out of the show? It's actually quite beautiful. They're like, I know a lot of us had a really hard time coming out of it. Are you all right? And which is gorgeous. And Camille, who was in the Australian season 2, her and I have communicated quite a lot, and I think have connected quite well because we had similar backgrounds. You know, like she was a federal agent, my background's policing and stuff, and we played a similar game. In terms of how we were mindset wise going into it. And so Camille reached out to me last week and she said, this might be crazy, but would you consider doing applying for the Amazing Race and doing it together?
Oh my gosh.
I was like, whoa, that is crazy, but I'm kind of keen. And I had never seen the Amazing Race before, but I watched some YouTubes, and the only thing that's made me go, oh, maybe not, is because they do eating challenges in it.
Oh, yeah.
And I told you about it. I was like, fuck, I don't think I could do it. Maybe.
Oh, okay.
So the fact that I've already been propositioned for that, and that would be pretty awesome to play with Camille because she's amazing. And it's such a mic drop play for her game. For season 2.
I loved Camille's.
She was outrageous, hey?
Yeah, she was awesome. Yeah. I feel like kind of after, I guess spoilers for Traitors Australia, if you haven't seen it, just fast forward maybe a few seconds or a minute. But once sort of Luke and Annabelle left, I kind of felt like, okay, this is Sam's game. He's going to take all that to the end, like sort of done. But then when Camille was finally recruited, I was like, yes, like finally someone who could potentially oppose Sam. Like I love Sam and I love Camille, but I was so excited that like there's finally a opposing force.
Yes.
Almost, yeah.
And that twist. And like I messaged her when they did their that up and down challenge that they did, and that Roger would present them with like a beer and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think she was the only person that declined a key to the armory and all of the offers that he had.
Yeah.
And I just went, holy moly, shit, this Camille is playing with such integrity and team gameplay, kind of like no man left behind. I'm doing this for the sake of the game. So everybody takes, can be successful, whoever takes it out. And that's kind of like how I wanted to play as well. I wanted to give my all to make sure that whoever did take it out was the most successful and deserved the win. And I loved her mindset and how she played with her heart that way. It was like the right thing to do. And then so when that happened with the final, I was so pleased because she had figured it out that they had identified her, that she was an integrity type player, played with her heart, doing the right thing, and that she was probably going to share. So the fact that she knew, had figured that out days prior, and they were going to get to this point.
It was awesome.
Crazy, man. It's hilarious because our kitty was so small in comparison. But I loved some of the memes that I'd seen that, like, New Zealand Sam, both New Zealand Sams ended up coming away with more money than Australian Sam. Terrible, but like very funny, and for
That
such a budget. I wonder what they do with
yeah.
the money, reinvested into the next season, maybe.
Season 3, yeah. It's an easy prize fund for season 3. I did actually I completely forgot to ask you this question. Were you thinking of gapping it for the 10K at the start?
No, never. No,
Never?
Nah. I was there purely for the experience. So the money for me, whilst it would have been wonderful, I never went into the game for the money. I went in purely to play. And I think the cool thing is that a lot of us did go in there purely to play. So it was, and because the kitty was small in terms of other reality series, I think that's why maybe our game was good, was because we weren't focused on the prize money. It was focused on actually playing it and strategy and all of the cool stuff that went with it. So potentially maybe that was why we did well, because we didn't have distractions in terms of monetary drivers, I guess. But yeah, no, it never crossed my mind. I think talking to Sam, because we'd never met, we didn't get to interact with him. So when we did finally actually meet him just prior to the show airing, I think for Sam, there might have been a little bit of I wish I'd played,
Yeah.
But at the same time, Sam did a really cool strategic gameplay. He said, he's on minimum wage. It makes sense from a smart play. But as well, there's two sacrifices there. It's smart taking the 10K and exiting, but also the opportunity that you miss out on the fun of playing.
Well, according to Hamish and I's strategic breakdown, that was the smartest move of the whole game.
Yeah. For money, absolutely.
For money, yeah.
That was crazy. That was wild. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking, no one's going to go for this twist. It's like a big sort of opening, dramatic moment, but no one's going to go for it. But then Sam was running. I was like, oh my gosh, what a mad lad. What a mad guy. Yeah.
And do you know what's wild? Sam told us that, I was like, what happened to you after that? And so he ran for the money. He got in the car. All of our bags and stuff were still in the back of those cars. We had not unpacked. We'd literally just arrived and started filming. Yeah. And he said that he got back in the car and had his bags, and they were like, your flight is booked for Christchurch in 2.5 hours. So he got back in the car and was driven to the airport and was on a flight.
Wow, just like that.
That's it.
Yo, that's crazy. I know. They must have thought that, okay, depending on who starts running, quickly grab their flight.
Right. So crazy. And people kind of think, oh, you have this debrief or something, but there was none of that. It was so savage. It was just you're murdered, you're banished, you're gone. And walk out, that's it. You're gone. Brutal.
Very brutal.
Yeah.
I did just want to highlight one last thing. While you didn't make the smartest move of the game, you definitely did make one of our smartest moves of the week, which was in week 2. I think it was when Matt got eliminated, or it was when Mike got eliminated, just before the vote. Some people were discussing oh, why are you faithful? Why are you faithful? And I believe you said the words, if you vote for me, you look like a fool afterwards. Or something along those lines. Yeah.
And do you know what's really funny about that is that I had relentless mic problems. So because I'm a sloucher, terrible.
Yeah.
I would slouch at the round table, and the sound people would be like, Julia, do not slouch because we can't hear you. And so I was like, okay. So I was trying to sit back in my chair. And when somebody came for me, and I think it was between Matt and I think you're right, and it was really tight, and they were like, hey, over to you, Julia, defend yourself.
Yeah.
And I went, whoa, and I was just about to tick off. And then they're like, hold, Julia, your mic's failed. So I was maybe a few words in, and then my mic cut out. And then I had to get up and leave the round table, and then I had to do the adjustments and then sit back down. And you know, when you're kind of like on a roll and you're like, okay, I'm going to say this next or whatever, I got like rudely interrupted with my mic cutting out. And then I was kind of like, oh, I've lost the momentum. What was I saying? And then sat down. I think there's a bit where you can see me saying, oh, sorry, guys. And I wasn't apologizing to the group for like them coming for me. It was actually the fact that I disrupted the round table, and I was apologizing, sitting back in my seat saying, oh, sorry about that, guys, for the disruption. Yeah. But yeah, far out, man. Like, you have to really think on your feet when the fuel is being poured on the fire, and you're trying to come up with anything that you can possibly say to prove that you're faithful. But it's incredibly hard because you have to be so specific, because whatever you say there can come up in conversation 2, 3, 4 to 5 days later. So it's like I have to be so precise with how I come up with my response. And like you say, remember, you guys were like, oh, it's hilarious. I watched your podcast with how Robbie's wording on day 2 ended up being Kings's demise on day 9.
Yeah.
And it's so true, because that's what I mean. It's like something that happened days ago, and it did gripe me to a degree. And I know that a lot of people disagree with this gameplay, but people are like, it's a fresh day. You have to start fresh. Every day is a new day. And I was like, well, no, it isn't. Every day is not a new day. You have to actually take into consideration, in my mind, every single thing that has happened from the moment that we started playing.
Yeah.
Because it's all relevant. That was my policing mindset, was evidential based. Everything is relevant. Everything that people have said at the round table, take that into consideration. The ways that people vote, take that into consideration. So crazy, eh? Like 8 days later, whammy.
Yeah, and one of my personal favorite moments of the whole season was when, like Kimberly, right at the start, she was using psychic abilities, and she predicted that Robbie would be a traitor.
Yeah, she did.
And, in that moment, she was wrong, but technically she was right, because several episodes later, she was a traitor.
I know, and everybody came for her, because you know how people go, oh, blah, psychics. Kimberly is such another beautiful, amazing human. And she got it right. She was like, something's not sitting right there for later on down the track. And it's crazy. But I guess it was a very smart play for Traitors to get rid of her early on, because it's like any sort of influence or potential for somebody to say something about them, you've got to cut that off really early.
Yeah.
So smart playing. Very smart.
Yeah, no, it was very smart. It made, I think, our 3rd week smartest move of the week. And even then I had to like really cook my brain and be like, okay, how am I going to word this so actually it comes across as a move? But yeah, no, one of my favorite moments on the season.
Oh, it was so fun to play. And I think that there's a card game version of Traitors that I think the franchise has come up with. So
okay,
you can order it internationally and recreate it in the home, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that'd be so sick too. Like, especially with like your family members, people who you've like, known like your whole life. Like because my face doesn't lie, especially my eyes. So it's like, if I'm up to something very mischievous, like you'll see my smile, you'll see my eyes sort of like sparkling. So everyone would be able to catch on to me straight away.
It's so hard it's amazing experience. And I'm so thankful that you guys were deep diving into it and enjoying discussing what you perceived from the outside of how it was being played out. And it was really, really joyous and fun for us to listen to, because we're in it. And we loved it. We just I know I certainly loved Enjoy, and definitely out of all the podcasts to listen to, it was the most positive and fun and enjoyable to listen to out of all.
Oh, thanks so much. It was it's actually my first time hosting a podcast, actually. Yeah, because I've just been a co-host with Chris and Kahuna for other shows, and normally with that, like, I don't have to write any notes. I can sit back, kick back, relax, let them, ask all the questions, and I just bring in
Yes.
some randomness. But, I've even got a book here, and it's got a bunch of questions I was going to ask you, but I didn't even look at it once during during our interview. It was
Because
just so
I'm just
chill.
gasping the whole way. She's on.
No, but thank you though, thank you. Because normally when I'm talking with Hamish deep diving, I'm always going next page, next next page, yeah. No, but thank you so much, Julia, for coming on. I really loved hearing more about your game and some things that wouldn't quite see, some of your early thoughts, and where can people find you on social media, and have you got any projects coming
on
up?
Instagram. So just under Julia Vahry on Instagram. And weirdly, I have an okay LinkedIn following. It's actually, that's my busiest social channel, which is a crazy LinkedIn. Which is where I got approached for the show. So probably because it's where I run my normal business, like my normal day-to-day life is from there. But just on Instagram, I'm Julia Vahry or Julia Vahry on LinkedIn. That's where I'm at. I don't really use Twitter. I don't understand how TikTok works. Not cool enough or something. I tried and then I went, oh, it's just too hard. So yeah, managing all the social media stuff is actually quite hard when you're running a business and you've got young kids. And
yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I'm working, I'm a podcaster, and I've got no kids, but even then I find Twitter confusing. So I totally understand.
Yeah. And I'm always consciously aware of like what I post, like trying to not look like a dick or sound like a dick, or if I'd say everybody's like, oh, coming for you all the time. So but I'm so thankful that you asked, and so grateful that you've asked me as well. It's very nice.
Thank you. It's been so lovely having you, Julia. And to everyone here that's new to the channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button. We have just reached over 2,000 subscribers. We hit our goal. Yeah, we were expecting it for maybe December, but it came much earlier in September. So we're really chuffed, really pleased. I know that Chris has got something very special planned up for the future for Australian Survivor, the challenge, and other shows coming up as well. So if you're interested in that content, please hit subscribe. If you liked our deep dive with Julia, please give it a solid like, and maybe we'll bring on more players from Traitors New Zealand to deep dive into their games. But for now, thank you so much, Julia, for coming along. And until next time, we'll catch you later. Bye.
See you. Thanks for having me.